Testing, testing. Hello, Dolly, welcome. Give me a few more seconds and I'll get switched over. Alrighty. There we are. Hello. Oh, let me start the background music. Hold on. This should be lower, just a teeny bit more. Okay, those levels look good. Hello, hello, and welcome. Today is just going to be a movie talk. Oh god, I have to clear my throat again. Hold on. Oh, excuse me. As you can tell, the throat clearing persists. How am I doing? I feel better. I feel better than I did yesterday and better than I did the day before. So we're getting there. We're getting there. I just wish there was something I could... you know what? I might have to buy another neti pod. I might have to buy another neti pod and flush out my sinuses, which I don't want to do because that's like the most uncomfortable. You know what? Let me check. How much is a neti pod on Amazon? Let me take a look here. How much is a neti pod? Probably like $12. Neti pot sinus rinse. Literally, okay, there's two different types. 12, 14, 16. Okay. It's not the most expensive thing. Oh, hello, Babney. Yeah, neti pod is horrific. It's the most like uncomfortable experience that you will ever experience. There's like the kind that looks like a teapot, and then there's the kind that's basically like a bottle that you just squeeze the water into your nose. The one I used to have was the kind that was just like the bottle that you squeeze into your nose. Flair, welcome, welcome. Oh my god, that Cinnamoroll emote is so cute. Holy fuck, that's adorable. So I might have to pick up one of those bad boys and see if it helps with the sore throat, because otherwise I don't really know what I can do to get rid of all the gunk that's in there, you know, besides, I mean, I've been taking my medicine, I've been drinking my tea, but it's like, so I just got back. I was clearing my throat a lot in the theater, but it was fine because the movie was really loud. But I just got back, literally just an hour ago. I got back from seeing Oppie Oppenheimer. That's one of the things I'm going to be talking about today. Let me tell you guys. So we get to the theater. The movie is supposed to start like, you know, it was supposed to start at a certain time, right? And we wait like half an hour and it still hasn't started. And so like, you know, some people are like why the movie was supposed to start at this time, why isn't it starting? So they were having some problems with the previews. They weren't able to get it working. So they just, after half an hour, they just started the movie. So we didn't have to sit through any previews, which was nice. We just had to sit in the theater without anything on the screen, which I'm not sure if that's better or worse than previews. So it was like half an hour late. But you know, the nice thing is that the movie lasted exactly 3 hours long. So I was able to get out, you know. I was worried like, uh-oh, if this goes on, I might be late for stream. But no, I had like an hour. And I spent that hour playing Power Wash Sim. And oh boy, that is the game, one of the games of all time, I think. It's on sale right now. Pick it up if you haven't already, but I'm planning on playing Power Wash Sim next week. It's so... so here's the way I play Power Wash Sim, I think is different than the way other people play it, because I like to go fast. I like to clean things as fast as possible. Because it's like whenever I watch people play Power Wash Sim, I get kind of irritated because they're not doing things as like quickly or as efficiently as I would do them. So now I can finally do things like as efficiently as I can, and it's so satisfying. Like, yes, I just cleaned this thing in like 3 minutes. Holy fuck, you know? Very, very satisfying. But hold on, I need to clear my throat again. But I guess let me have some water. I have a whole process now. I need to clear my throat, cough, get some water. And I actually saw the last time I did one of if the washing lasts over 30 minutes, then it's free. Seal Pope cleaning services. Exactly. I haven't done a movie talk probably in at least a month, if not a month and a half. I like to, like, you know, watch a lot of movies and then talk about them all at once. I'm actually not going to talk about everything I watched, like, within the past, like, month and a half today, because, frankly, some of them were just, like, so bad they weren't really worth talking about. What did I talk about last time? I don't actually remember what I talked about last time, to be honest with you. I mean, the VOD is there on my YouTube channel, but I usually talk about a bunch of different movies. But let's see here. The first one I want to talk about today. Oh, it's so tiny. This one, to be fair, this one is not that good of a movie. I will. Can I please click on the make it bigger? Hold on. Can I please make this bigger? It's a tiny poster. So, this is one of the movies that I watched. From the director of the Blair Witch Project, yes. So here's the thing, I really liked the Blair Witch Project. I thought it was a good movie, so I foolishly assumed that this would be a good movie as well, right? But it was not. Basically, I'll give you the rundown, and I'll more or less spoil the ending for you, because you could probably, it's like an ending you could see coming a mile away. So as you can tell, there is a creature in the corner. That creature is Bigfoot. This is a Bigfoot movie. What is happening in the poster? Well, in the center you have a car that has been crushed by a tree, or yeah, like a tree that's sticking out of the car. So that is, sorry, I had to clear my throat. That is something that happens in the movie. And basically the plot of the movie is that you have a group of teenagers, they're going to a cabin in the woods to have premarital sex and do other degenerate things, like drink and smoke pot. And then, you know, one of the kids, the prankster, he's like, yo, my uncle, he saw something up here back in '89 and it scarred him ever since. And they're all like, shut up, dude. No one, shut up, dude. No one gives a fuck. So, you know, this kid is kind of, hello, welcome. You know, the one prankster kid, he kind of becomes obsessed with the idea that there is something out there, some kind of creature. Which, you know, the creature is Bigfoot, obviously. And he kind of like, he sort of goes out looking for it, right? And he ends up agitating the creature. And eventually Bigfoot comes to the cabin and they're like, oh shit, it's fucking Bigfoot. He's real. What do we do? And, you know, they get the bright idea like, well, we gotta like, he's attacking us, so we gotta attack him. We gotta kill him. So, you know, at first they're just trying to get him on camera, and then it kind of comes down to like, they really piss off Bigfoot. They really piss him off. I forget what exactly they do, but just through shenanigans, right? And eventually, oh, I remember what happens. One of them, they try to escape and they end up killing like the baby Bigfoot, and, you know, naturally, Bigfoot is going to come out and get them, and that's exactly what he does. He goes around and he corners them and he kills them and blah blah blah, and he is able to prevent them from escaping by pretty much what the poster entails, just crushing their car with a fucking tree. Hold on. God, hold on, this is a big throat clear, hold on. And, you know, eventually they're able to, he basically kills all of them, more or less. He basically kills all of them. The poster is a spoiler pretty much. Like, it's not a good movie. I would not recommend watching it. I think like one of them escapes, like by the skin of his teeth. But like Bigfoot in this movie, he's very persistent. He's like extremely persistent. He's literally like a slasher. It might as well be a slasher movie. Exactly. It might as well be with how persistent he is. But I believe one of them escapes with his uncle, I think. I haven't watched this movie. Excuse me. I think I watched this like at least a month ago. So it's not super fresh in my brain. Oh, thank you for the head pat. But it's fresh enough that I remember that it's not a particularly good movie. Let me turn the BGM up just a little bit. Okay, there we go. That should be fine. I would give it like a 4.5 out of 10. If I'm being real here. I don't really have that much to say about it. I just like kind of put it in here to fill some space. But 4.5 out of 10, not really worth a watch, in my personal opinion. Unless you really like mediocre bad movies like I do. But yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna bring up something else here. Now we're gonna start getting into the good shit. We're gonna start getting into some good stuff. I just want to put one bad movie on there, right? Okay, here's one that I like. Oh, why is it so big? Damn it. Okay, hold on. There we go. Fix that sizing a little bit there. So, this next movie, as you can tell by the poster, is called Paradise. It is, however, a German movie, so it is probably called something different. It's a little loud. In the original German title. I couldn't tell you what it is. It's a Netflix movie. I don't know if it was like made for Netflix or if it's just like a movie that is on Netflix and they put the Netflix like, you know, title on there. But I watched it with subtitles because, you know, I'll die before I watch a fucking dub of a movie. You know? Just with the horrible, horrible ADR, but I actually have a lot to say about this movie. I took a lot of notes on this. So, the plot of this movie is that it takes place in the future, right? And technology in the future allows you to donate years of your life. So, for example, you could like get paid to donate. It's like donating blood, basically. Like, you get paid to donate like 5, 10, 15 years off of your life. And it does, of course, age you very quickly. The technology itself doesn't really make any sense, but, you know, that's not really the point of the movie. So, there's a lot of people in this future. It's kind of dystopian, where poor people often have to sell their years off of their life just to get by. The movie opens up like the main character, he's basically like a broker for this company that buys people's time, more or less. And the opening scene is him trying to convince a 19-year-old to sell, I think it was like 12 or 15 years off of his life so he could make money, because his family was like refugees. And he's like, yeah, you know, if you sell your life, you'll be able to go to college, you'll be able to get a new life for your family. So he's basically like, he's like a salesperson, kind of a little bit scummy. Isn't that called working? In a way, but it's like fast. Like, you go to the clinic and you have it done, and it's like boom in this movie. So he's a little bit of a scumbag, but at the same time, he's also a wagey. Like, that's his job. That's what he does. He wakes up in the morning, he goes to work, he does his job. He gets like awards for being like the best life. Not even a salesperson. It's more of like he's convincing people to like sell him their lives. So it's like a weird transactional kind of thing. But he and his wife are basically wages. Like, they're living in an overpriced like apartment that they can barely afford, and you know, they're trying to make, like, they're living good, but they're still trying to make ends meet, right? Moving away, death of a salesman. We have aging of the salesman. So through a series of unfortunate events, the cartoon legend, welcome, the main character, excuse me, and his wife, they lose their apartment, sorry, in a fire. And they do not have enough money to basically like cover the insurance costs. So the wife, without her husband's knowledge, put her own life up as collateral, like her years on her life, right? Like if something happens to the apartment and I don't have the money to pay for it, then I will pay for it using the years off of my life. And she did that without the knowledge of her husband. So naturally he finds out, and she's basically like legally like required to give them the years off of her life. Like she has to do it. Like they basically kind of like, it's like a procedure that's almost kind of like some kind of transfusion process. Like they put you in a chair, they strap you in, they put some plugs into your body, and then they suck out your life your life juice, and then it gets transferred to someone else. So it's more or less like a blood transfer in a way. She went through it without his consent, yes. Or like really like her own consent, technically. So basically, the lady is in the poster, right? The woman in the poster, that's his wife. And as you can see, she goes very quickly from being a young woman to an old woman. Because I think she sold like almost 30 years. Almost 30 years of her life was taken out of her. So she was like, yeah, it was like 28 to 30 years. That's how much was taken out of her. So she literally became like, you know, a husk, quite literally. And you know, she's depressed and she's having to deal with. And they move into what appears to be subsidized, some kind of subsidized housing, like almost like a project, right? In this like Soviet bloc style apartment. And it's interesting to me, that thing, because it's like we say in America, like you're only one accident away from going bankrupt. And this was kind of giving me like that feeling, like you just have one accident and your life is completely upended. I feel like I age 30 years every time someone reminds me the PS2 isn't a recent console. The PS2 was a very good DVD player, I will say that. So the wife, she's pretty like, she's not feeling herself, you know, she doesn't feel beautiful, she's lost her youth, so she leaves her husband and goes to live with her parents because, you know, she feels like she is like, she doesn't have her beauty, her youth, her worth anymore. And the husband, he goes like, fuck the system, I'm going to find a way to get my wife's life back. Yeah, she's like, she was almost the same age as her parents, like almost the same age, I think. So he finds out that the woman, oh, I should probably say spoilers. I'm not gonna spoil the entire movie, but I will be, I do want to talk about, there we go, this movie, because it's really good, and I do kind of want you to know like what's going on. Like it's too light. I don't know if you guys can see this. All right, I'll just leave this here. I'll leave this here for now. It's kind of hard to see against the background, but it's fine. He finds out that the woman who took his wife's youth is basically his boss. And he basically comes up with this plan to kidnap her, take her to Lithuania, to this like clinic that can basically reverse the process in this like really sketchy, like it's like a sketchy thing, right? Oh, you pay this guy like $1 million, you have to use burner phones, you get picked up at this time, we're gonna pay off the border patrol agents. So he basically goes through this whole like adventure, not even adventure, it's more like a misadventure. But it's and what I like about this movie specifically is that at the beginning of the movie, you see this man and he's kind of painted like he's a piece of shit, right? He's like actively screwing people over, convincing them to sell their lives to his company so he can, like, you know, so he can live large, right? But it turns out that he himself is not living so large, you know? He and his wife can barely afford their apartments. To be fair, that was probably their fault in the first place for buying an overpriced apartment, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. And there's this thing that, like, I feel like the movie reflects, and it's like no one is objectively good or objectively bad. People do bad things to get good results. People do good things to get, like, bad results. Like, there's this kind of mentality that a lot of people have. I see it a lot with a lot of, like, younger people, a lot of, like, people involved in, like, online discourse, I should say, that think that, like, everyone over a certain income level is bad and evil, and everyone below a certain income level is inherently, like, good or whatever. And that's just not how life works. Life is, like, I'm gonna get a little real here, maybe a little bit depressing, but life is a cycle of exploitation and being exploited, whether that be financial, physical, social, and no one, like, because this is the man who, despite, like, exploiting other people, he is also being exploited by this system that he is in. He is a victim of it, he is also a perpetrator of it. And that is, and the same is true of his boss, you know? Like, no one in this movie is objectively bad, and no one is, like, I mean, there are people who are, like, pretty bad, like, let's be real. But, like, you know, even bad people will have, like, reasons why they did things. Like, I did this because, you know, of my daughter. I did this because of my family. I did this because of XYZ. Like, yeah, he was kind of consumed by the system. And, you know, in the process of, like, getting his wife's life back, he ends up screwing over another family. You know, another family with, like, a child as well. He ends up completely, like, screwing them over and potentially traumatizing them for the rest of their life. And, you know, there's this scene, like, for a lot of the movie, the wife is kind of, like, she's very apprehensive about this whole thing. Like, she knows about her husband who's going to do this plan, and she goes along with it, but she kind of, like, protests it and kind of, like, questions him. Like, are we really doing the right thing here? Is this, like, the right thing to do? Because, like, in the process of getting her life back, she is also taking away someone else's life. She is screwing over other people, and she questions that a lot of the time. And her husband he's more like, you know, no, we have to do this. We have to complete this. And later on in the movie, they have a complete reverse where the husband starts having second thoughts and the wife is like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to see this all the way through. And it culminates with them, like separating again later in the movie, where the wife, I'll just say, she decides to get the procedure at the sketchy Lithuanian clinic. But one thing that, you know, they were kind of finding out is that there were a lot of, like, you know, refugees who were selling their lives at these illegal, sketchy clinics, you know, to get, like, you know, to get ahead, to get more money. And it is kind of a depressing movie. It is kind of a movie where everyone kind of, like, gets screwed over. Everyone screws over each other. But that is kind of what I like about it. It gives kind of, like, an unfiltered, it's not idealistic at all. It is not an idealistic world that this movie is painting. It's definitely a lot more real. I would definitely recommend watching this movie. Like, I highly recommend this, because I don't like movies that kind of paint this, like, idealistic view of good and bad. Like, oh, this person is objectively bad, so we have to go against these people because we're the good guys. And it is technically sci-fi, but it does, like, yeah, it does keep you grounded in reality. Like, the aging concept is a message that there's no shortcuts in life. Kind of. In a way, it sort of is. But I really like this movie. I think that there's too much, like, you know, idealization that, like, you know, like I said, just like this idealistic view of the world that's kind of naive. In this movie, kind of like shows like, no, this is a cycle. This is like, you know, how life is. Like, you will screw over people in your attempt to get ahead, and vice versa. People will screw over you in their attempt to get ahead. It is a cycle. It's an unfortunate cycle, but, you know, that's the way it is. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil the ending for this movie, because it is a pretty good movie, and I would recommend it. It is on Netflix. I assume in the US it's on Netflix. In Germany, I have no idea, or other parts in the world, I have no idea where it's from. But highly, highly recommend this movie. Very, very good. I liked it a lot. I would probably give it like, I'd say like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Not like the greatest, but still very good, very refreshing, and very interesting and engaging. I don't quite remember how long it is off the top of my head. I think it was like maybe 2 hours or so. I don't quite remember, but very good. I recommend. Let's see, where is the... Here it is. Now we're gonna start getting into like kind of like more horror movie territory. Because I do... Okay, there we go. I do like a good horror movie, and I was watching a lot of those. But the next one is also a Netflix movie. It is Bird Box Barcelona, which is the sequel to the hit movie Bird Box. And this movie was very different than the first Bird Box movie. I'm not gonna spoil this movie, but I'll leave a spoiler on there anyway. So right off the bat, if you remember the first Bird Box movie, you remember that there's two types of people. There's the normal people who, you know, blind themselves, or who can't, like, if you see the thing, if you see the creature, you will go crazy and you'll kill yourself, right? That's the concept of Bird Box. However, there's also crazy people who, when they see the thing, it gives them the urge to kill other people. So that's what we got going on here. And right off the bat, the movie takes a very different tone than the first one, because in the first one, you have, you know, everyone's trying to figure out what's going on, and you have the normal people trying to avoid the crazy people who want to kill them. But in this movie, it actually is about, like, a crazy person who wants to kill everyone else in his, like, point of view and perspective, which I thought was a really interesting, like, change of pace. Because I think if they had just done the same thing as in the original Bird Box movie, it would have just been repetitive, right? Like, I mean, the only thing that's different is, like, the fact that it takes place in Spain, or Barcelona, I should say. Well, yeah, that's Spain. And the fact that it is about, like, one of the crazy people who wants to kill everyone else. And it was, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I would say it wasn't as good as the original Bird Box movie. I liked the original. I thought it was fresh and new, even though technically, apparently it was it Bird Box that was based off of, well, it wasn't based, but there was another very similar movie that came out before it was either Bird Box or it was the other one with the creatures. It was the sound creatures or the vision creature. You know what movie I'm talking about? I don't even remember what it's called, but there was a similar movie to that. Anyway, so in this movie, we have the guy on the right side of the poster. I forget his name, but he's one of the crazy people who wants to kill everyone. And what he does, he kind of pretends to be a normal person. Like, he walks around with a blindfold and infiltrates the camps of the people who are, like, you know, normal, unaffected by the thing, right? And he finds ways to get them to look at the creatures so that they will kill themselves. But the way, like, he sees it, he sees it as their souls are being freed. Like, apparently when these people die, after they see the creature, their soul, like, it's like a ball of light that goes up into the sky. So it's like, it's a little like, kind of like a crazy cult kind of mentality. Like, oh, I'm not killing people, I'm freeing their souls. He has that mentality. That's his thing. So that's his goal. And he finds a group of survivors. Ah, thank you for the Pope mode. A cult, yeah, exactly. Speaking of cults, hello. He finds a group of survivors. He finds a way to, like, you know, get them to kill themselves by crashing their car. And then he finds another group of survivors who are trying to, you know, they're trying to reach safety because they heard about this little place in the mountains that's supposed to be safe from the creatures or whatever. And they're trying to figure out how to get there. And all the while, he basically kind of has a tulpa. He basically has a tulpa that's kind of telling him what to do. And it's, you know, telling him like how to kill people, which direction he should go in, where to find things. It's basically like a tulpa that's in the skin of like a little girl, right? And so that tulpa is kind of guiding him through his adventure. And so he finds a group of survivors, he nestles in with them, and over the course of the movie, he actually kind of starts to get his, like, mind changed. Like, he starts having doubts about whether, you know, killing people is the right thing to, or freeing their souls is the right thing to do. He starts to, like, wonder, like, you know, am I really helping them? Especially because, like, one of the survivors is a child. And he, you know, for obvious reasons, you can't show a child committing suicide on a movie screen, right? For obvious reasons, you can't do that. And so he has, like, his doubts about, you know, getting this child to die because he also had a daughter who was killed by the crazy people before he became crazy. And so he, you know, over the course of the movie, like, some of the survivors, they do die. But his goal, he eventually, like, completely changes sides. Like, the tulpa in his head is kind of, like, telling him, like, oh, you need to kill these people, you need to free their souls. And eventually he starts to, like, doubt that and even, like, shut it out. To the point where he becomes, like, he becomes reformed, basically. He becomes reformed to, you know, help these people get out and help them, you know. He basically gets reformed. They eventually are able to get to, like, the safe zone. But there is some interesting things that happen at the safe zone that I'm not really going to spoil for you that happen at the very end, because there's some, like, interesting conclusions that you can draw from the ending, as well as, like, you know, potentially leaving room for, like, another sequel. But I thought it was interesting. It was not like, I was on my phone a little bit during this movie, I'm not gonna lie. I was checking my phone a couple times because there were some times where it was a little bit, like, a little bit dull. But otherwise, I was impressed by the originality of having essentially what is a bad guy be the hero of the movie, by having, like, a bad guy, like, just the movie be about the crazy person, right? Because it's, like, so often in these, like, kind of movies, it's like, oh, the hero, and he's doing heroic things, and he doesn't really need to have, like, his viewpoint question, like the hero's journey, right? He doesn't really need to, like, he goes through stuff, sure, but it's not really as interesting as having, like, you know, the villain or the bad guy or the crazy person be front and center in the movie as your protagonist. I thought that was a really interesting choice. And I feel like it pretty much saved the movie from being, like, another boring kind of schlocky, like, just basically the same thing as the previous movie. Because I kind of went into this being like, okay, this is just gonna be Bird Box, but it takes place in Spain. But it was more than that. It was a little more than that, and I appreciated that. I thought that was I thought it was a good choice. Like, instead of the good guys trying to reform the bad guy, it's like the bad guy unintentionally getting reformed by the good guy. So that's my hold on, need some water. Those are my thoughts about it. I would recommend this movie. If you want something like, you know, to watch, just like kind of like a casual movie, not really as like a, oh, I'm gonna watch this movie and it's gonna be excuse me, it's gonna be cinema, right? Like it was a good watch. It was a good watch. I enjoyed it. I'd probably give it like a 6.5 out of 10, a 6 out of 10. I thought it was a little bit less interesting than the last movie I talked about, but it's still pretty good. It was still worth a watch. So that's Bird Box Barcelona. I enjoyed this movie. Let's see. Next up we have, oh, what should I talk about next? Okay, we'll do another horror movie. Oh, it's so big. Oh, Jesus Christ. Why do the posters always do this? So this is a movie, where did I watch this? Was it on Amazon, or it might have been on Netflix or on Amazon, I forget, or it could have been on Tubi. But anyway, this movie is called Malum. Oh, actually, hold on, wait. That poster is kind of gory. I don't know if I can show this. Hold on a second, hold on. I'm gonna move this up. There we go. That should be fine. I know Twitch has some rules regarding like, oh, thank you for the posture check, hey man, thank you. Some rules regarding like blood and stuff. Even though it's fake blood, I'm just gonna put it up there, just to be safe, right? But this movie, do I have notes on this movie? Did I take notes on this? Here it is. Oh, I got it for free with an Amazon promotional credit. So, yeah, it's just makeup. Exactly. So, was an interesting movie. I had heard, like, good things about this movie. So, I decided to give it a try. The opening definitely, like, it got me because it really lulls you in with a sense of false security. I should mention this movie is kind of bloody. It does have a bit of gore in it. Lots of fake blood. But it is a horror movie. I'll give you a quick rundown that I wrote. So, a rookie police officer works her first shift at the old station where her father worked. And why am I hiding the poster? Because there's like a lady covered in blood on this poster, and I don't want Twitch to get mad at me, so I'm just putting it up there just in case. Like, you can still see the title, but just like I don't want, like, you know, them to get mad at me for fake blood. But what had happened is that her father had killed who was a police officer as well, and he killed a bunch of his fellow officers and then himself at the station where she is working at. And so this is actually like kind of an interesting world that they painted here, because in this world there's a cult. It seems to be a very big cult because it's like the cult is taking over town. I don't quite remember what the cult was called, but they basically have this thing with pigs where they'll like bring pigs around, they'll like put pig's blood on places, they'll sacrifice pigs' heads. You don't really see an animal get killed in this movie, but just like a lot of the pigs are a theme. Of this cult. And so the pig cult is basically taking over the town, and she kind of has to like defend this station like by herself against the pig cult, more or less. And it's a lot of like supernatural kind of things. Like, she's having visions, she's seeing things, hearing voices, and she's kind of being tormented by this cult as she is just trying to get through the night shift. Like, it's like a Five Nights at Freddy's kind of situation where she's the only one in this facility, and like all the animatronics are like, you know, cult people trying to like fuck with her. but they're not trying to kill her. They're just trying to torment her and just like make her really upset, you know? And over the course of the movie, she finds out that her mother was just a prank, just a social experiment. Yeah. Her mother was involved in this cult. And her mother is like kind of like an alcoholic. And eventually, like, she's like in the station and she's like, there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of like blood in this movie, a lot of like kind of disturbing things happen. So I would not watch it if you, it's not like the worst thing I've ever seen. Like if I was able to watch it, then you'll probably be okay, because I have a pretty low tolerance for things like, you know, gore and stuff. But it's mostly like psychological torment that they are inflicting on her. And I don't wanna, I'm not gonna spoil the ending for this one, but a lot of what happens is that the cult is trying to get her to do something so that they can use her in their infernal ritual. And a lot of what happens in the movie is that like the leader of the cult, his name is John Malum, he's supposed to be dead. He's supposed to have died in that very station. However, it seems that his spirit and the spirits of those cultists that were killed in there are still haunting the station and still haunting her. So she goes through all of this like torment. Yeah, his name is literally John Malum. That's the name of the leader of the cult. John Evil Malum. That's his middle name. It's kind of like I don't know, they could have given him a more interesting name, but I suppose like Malum, that's an interesting last name, right? And people die, they get killed. It's hard to talk about what goes on in this movie without spoiling it. But I would say it's definitely worth a watch, especially if you're looking for like kind of an interesting horror movie. I will say that for me, the ending was kind of like abrupt. Like you have all this buildup. You have all this buildup to something happening, and then it happens, and then the movie just ends. Like that. Like it's kind of like an open ending, but it's like you have all this stuff, it builds up, it builds up, it builds up, and then it's over. Just like that. That is my only issue with the movie. That I feel like the ending could have been a little like better paced, I think, or just like the whole leading up to it could have been a little bit better paced. But it does give kind of like, you know, room for something to happen. Not like a sequel, but just like kind of like it's a little open-ended. Like you think like, oh, what happened after this, right? What could have possibly happened? Like, yeah, like I said, this one is on Amazon. Have I ever watched Jacob's Ladder? Yes, I have. I like that movie a lot. I saw the original and I think I saw the remake. I think I did, yeah. I'd say I definitely liked the original better. The original definitely had like a lot more, and the remake was a little bit like, oh, we're just gonna like, you know, kind of try to do the same thing over and over again. So that was a little bit like, could have done it better. But yeah, back to Malum. I recommend it. It was a pretty good movie. I would also give this one a 7 out of 10. It's not like the best thing I've ever seen, but it was pretty good. It was pretty high up there. Like compared to all like the schlock and the crap that's on, like, you know, especially when it comes to horror movie. I feel like it's so easy to make a bad horror movie that it's like harder to make one that's actually good. And that's one thing I feel like this movie did. It was good. It was pretty good. So I would recommend Malum. You can watch it on Amazon or probably somewhere else depending on where you're from. It's not free on Amazon, but it can be free if you know what I mean. Anyway, let's see. Change the poster here. Oh, okay. This one is what is happening with the poster? Oh dear. Why is it like this? Oh fuck. Hold on, I know what to do. Transform. Fit to screen. There we go. That wasn't so difficult. Alrighty. So this movie is actually a rewatch. This is something I rewatched, like last week or something. This is a movie, this is actually one of my, I think it's a really good movie. I would say, is it one of my favorites? It's up there, it's up there. It's called Monsters. It's by Gareth Edwards, who is the director of Rogue One and the 2014, no, listen, I know how it looks, but hear me out. Gareth Edwards, who directed Rogue One, and he also directed the 2014 Godzilla reboots. But this was his kind of like debut movie. So a bit about him. He's actually a VFX guy. This is the first like real movie he's directed. Before this, he did a lot of like effects for really a wide variety of big Hollywood movies. But he did Rogue One, which is probably like, I would say, the best movie to come out of the new Star Wars trilogy, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. That was like the only one that I enjoyed, Rogue One. But back to this movie, I would say the poster, the logo kind of gives District 9 vibes, but it's not really anything like District 9 at all. It's a little bit more like Cloverfield in a way, and I'll tell you what I mean. So it takes place in this kind of alternate reality. The movie itself is more of like, it's more character based rather than like, it's about the character's development rather than it is about like the monsters or like the ins and outs of like the world itself. Basically, the movie takes place in an alternate version of the world where space aliens crash landed in northern Mexico. And the entire northern half of Mexico is completely closed off because that is where the aliens live. And the aliens, they're not like little green men. They're like giant squids, basically. They're like giant squid monsters. So you can't go into that part of the country. And the most interesting thing about this movie, when did this movie come out? Hold on. The most interesting, well, it came out in 2010. This movie came out in 2010, but it does not look or feel like a 2010 movie. It feels like a movie that came out like fairly recently. It holds up really well. Not only the effects, but just like the way it's written, the way the movie is. It holds up really well. But the funny thing about this movie is that how do I say this? There's a big wall that separates the United States and Mexico in this movie because the wall keeps like the aliens out. The literal aliens, not like the people. I mean, it also does that too, but this is 2010. This is before all that shit happened, right? This is before everything. Crispy pies, welcome. So the wall is for the space aliens. Hey, listen. The wall is for the space aliens, okay? And the movie centers around these two people, whose names I forget because I'm terrible with names, and that is probably like my worst quality, is that I'm terrible with names. But anyway, basically, the lady right here, she is the daughter of a magazine mogul, basically. She comes from a wealthy family. She's the daughter of a guy who owns like a really famous magazine. The guy on the right, oh, thank you for the jacket. He is a photographer for her dad's magazine. And she is kind of like stuck. They're both stuck in Mexico, right? Her deal is like she was in like, you know, I don't know why she was there. It never explains why she's there. Just that she's kind of like there dicking around, right? She does seem to be involved in some kind of humanitarian work. I think that was her deal. But she's there, they're both there. And his job is to get her out of the country safe and sound. So he's kind of like an interesting contrast to her, because she herself is she's a very empathetic person. She's a very kind person. She, you know, speaks you'll watch as long as the Mexico scenes. They do not have the Breaking Bad piss filter. They do not. I will say that. They actually, it looks nice. It looks realistic, I think, in my opinion. But she is the more like kind, empathetic, like warm person. And he is a little bit more callous. He's more like, he's more callous. He's kind of like the opposite of her. And so for a lot of the movie, they're kind of like at ends with each other. Like she's trying to like, you know, talk with the locals, make conversation, ask them questions. And he's just kind of like, I'm here to take pictures and I have a job to do. And that's all I'm really here for. And there's a very interesting exchange in the movie that stuck with me. It stuck with me years after I've originally watched it. So it's the lady, she's talking to him about how his photographs, like a lot of his photographs are pictures of like destruction, like, you know, death and destruction. And she says, like, doesn't it ever bother you that all your pictures do is show like, you know, people dying, people sick, people unhappy, and destruction? And he says to her, do you know how much your dad's magazine pays for a photo of a happy child? Nothing. Do you know how much your father's magazine pays for a picture of a dead child? I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000. And so I don't know why, but that quote has always just like stuck with me for some reason. Just kind of like the idea that people are profiting off of misery, but it's like the same thing that was happening in like Paradise. It's like a cycle of exploitation, you know? In a way, he is like, you know, being exploited because he has to go in there and he has to take these pictures because he needs money to live, right? And then these people, like, you could argue, like, you could argue all day about whether a photo is like exploitation. People have done that for years and years, but it's definitely like kind of like it's a little bit deep. That's kind of stuck with me, you know, how people just like to process off of misery photography. Yeah, that's kind of like what he is. So he's kind of like taking a lot of pictures, and a lot of his pictures are of like things being destroyed, things like buildings destroyed by the creatures, buildings, just people being like, people in poverty, people suffering, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's making profit off of other people's misery. And so they basically have to get out of the country, right? And so they're trying to do this. They originally, for some reason that's never explained, they can't fly out of the country. It never explains why they can't fly. It just says they can't. I was thinking, like, you can't okay, you can't fly over the infected zone, right? That I understand. But couldn't you just like fly to the Bermudas and just like take a plane up into Florida? That in my opinion, that is the biggest plot hole in the entire movie, why they can't fly out of Mexico. But that's neither here nor there. So they take a train. Implying Florida would be better. I mean, if you see the movie, I think Florida would be better. They take a train that's supposed to take them like around the zone and back into the US, but the train tracks got destroyed because of Il Monstro. So they basically are like, okay, we have to find another way. So they go to this port town and they find out that they can take a boat back into the US. However, the boat is like, what was it? Oh, it was $5,000. No, sorry, it was $2,000. The boat ride was $2,000. However, through a series of events, they lose their passports and they can no longer take the boat back into the US. So, hold on. They decide that they are going to go the only other way they can go, which is through land, which is the most dangerous way because it's directly through the infected zone. So they go back to the boat guy, they argue with him, and he's like, I can take you through the land for $5,000. So I don't know if that like $5,000 was like, how do I say it? Like, remember how I said the quote earlier about the guy saying like the magazine pays $5,000 for a picture of like a dead child? I was wondering if that was like something on purpose, you know? The ride back into the US is like the same price as a photo of, you know, someone suffering. I don't know if that was like intentional or not, but I thought that was interesting. There's like multiple aliens. Yeah, because it's like a zone that is completely closed off. It's like overgrowth, right? It's like abandoned. The entire northern half of Mexico is just abandoned, laid waste by the aliens. It's like a jungle. So, you know, there's lots of like jungle. Lots of jungle, right? And so they're going through the jungle. Yeah, nobody lives there. And it's basically like an illegal operation. You know, they're paying the guards. Why don't they nuke it? Well, it's interesting you bring that up because they do talk about through the movie how they are trying to get rid of the creatures, but every time they do, like, they drop a lot of chemical bombs on the creatures because it's like there's a disease like that affects the flora and the fauna, right? And so they drop chemical bombs to kind of like neutralize the infection. But that also agitates the creatures and it causes them to go on a rampage and attack the bordering areas. So there's a lot of shots of like towns, like the towns that they're at is like right on the border of where the infected zone is. Moritz, welcome. So there's a lot of like, they talk to people and people are telling them like, yeah, you know, like every year when they start the bombing, the creatures, they go crazy and they like, you know, they're often come into town and they destroy things and we have to rebuild things every year. And, you know, the girl, she asks their taxi driver, like, do you feel safe living here? And he's just like, well, no, but I have nowhere to go. You know, my family is here and I have to work to support my family. So, you know, even though it's dangerous, even though the creatures are right next door, I have no choice. I you know, I gotta stay here, right? So it's like it's like grounded in reality, despite the fact that it is like a sci-fi film. But the monsters, like I said, Gareth Edwards, he's an VFX guy. Very, very good. One of the most interesting things about this movie is that it was made on a very small budget. It was made on about $500,000 and it was filmed over the course of like 3 weeks, which is pretty crazy. So like a very low budget, very short filming time, but it looks really good. It feels like a really well-produced, well-made movie. Another interesting thing that I read is that like apparently a lot of the dialogue was improvised. Like a lot of the dialogue was improvised. And I feel like that was a really good choice because it feels more natural that way in this movie. Like the way they talk, it's kind of awkward at times. Like the line you like, was it improvised? I have no idea if it was improvised or not. That I actually don't know, and that's what really interests me, because if it was improvised, that was a really good improv line. That was really good. Because it's like the way they talk can be really, like sometimes it feels awkward. Like there's this scene where they're both drunk and they're both coming home after a night of partying, and they're talking like they're drunk. Like they're doing that like thing where it's a really awkward thing where he's kind of trying to like hit on her and like, you know, she's drunk too, but she's just kind of like, she's just like laughing it off. and just like saying a bunch of like kind of awkward lines, but it makes it feel so much more human that way, you know? It makes it feel so much more human and a little bit more like interesting. Like there are times where they say some kind of like weird and out of pocket stuff that just comes out of nowhere, but in a way like okay, they're stranded in the middle of the jungle, right? And then they start having this weird conversation, and it's like, well, you know, if I was stranded in the jungle, maybe I would have a weird conversation as well. You know, like they're not even talking about like how are we gonna get out of here, what are you gonna do when you get back. They're just having this like weird conversation about, I don't even remember what it was about, but somehow it feels like so like natural and so human about this. Let me look back at, let's see. Oh, interesting. The chronological ending takes place at the beginning of the film. Okay, so it's like a film where you kind of like, there's a scene at the very beginning of the movie is technically something that happens at the end, but you don't actually know that because you don't know the context of it. It's not like it spoils the ending. It's just like, oh, this is like it doesn't spoil the ending because it's like it shows you a scene and without the context, you don't know what is happening. Because it was like, if it just like told you, then it would be like stupid, right? But without the context, you're like, I have no idea what's happening here. Interesting thing, the box office for this movie was 4.24 million according to Wikipedia, which is like a really good, really good number, I think, especially for a movie that cost like that much. But like I said, Gareth Edwards, he's only hold on a second. He's only had like technically 4 films. Monsters, this was his debut. He did a lot in this movie. He was the director of photography, visual effects, and production designer, so he did a lot. He did 2014 Godzilla. That movie I never saw. I'm thinking about it now because like I don't like the American Godzilla movies. I think that's fucking stupid. Like, oh, Godzilla's in New York. No, he's fucking not. He's in Japan, you idiot. Why would he be in New York? But if he directed it, I might watch it. I think that was the one with Millie Bobby Brown. I'm not sure. Rogue One. That one, I really like Rogue One. I thought that was a really, really good movie. And his next movie is The Creator, which is a movie that's coming up. I don't know if it released already. It says 2023. I really want to see this movie. This is like his movie. It says he was the director, writer, and producer of The Creator. And, ooh, the film, Sturgill Simpson is in The Creator. Okay, let me check and see when The Creator comes out. September 26th. What's the date? That's like next week. It's like 2 weeks from now. New York City rats rival the size of Godzilla. Exactly, this fucking rats. But I would highly recommend this movie. I think it really holds up. It's like a nice movie. It's mostly character driven. Johnny Memes, thank you so much for the follow. Thank you. Not so much like big sci-fi action. It's like a small story set in a really interesting world. And those are some of my favorite types of movies, is when it's not about like, oh, the big epic sci-fi. It's like, here's a story that takes place in a world that is like very similar, yet very, very different from ours. Hello, I'm doing well. We're just talking about, I'm talking about some movies that I've watched recently. Because it's like sometimes like my issue I have like with like fantasy stuff and like sci-fi stuff is that it's like everything is like too big. It's like a story about saving the universe, saving like it's too big, you know? And this is like a small, cozy, self-contained story that takes place in a really interesting world. I should mention that this movie also has a sequel, but the sequel is not very good. It's called Monsters Dark Continent, and it was not directed by Gareth Edwards. It was directed by someone else. So it's like literally kind of the Cloverfield sort of situation where you have like a sequel that is created like almost entirely by someone else. But I really enjoyed this movie. I would say it is one of my favorites, and I would highly recommend it. I think it is free on Tubi right now. So if you want to watch it for free, you should be able to find it on Tubi. Let me see. Yeah, it's on Tubi. Okay, also on Peacock and Redbox too. And apparently on YouTube? I'm not sure, but highly recommend this movie. Very good, one of my favorites. And let's see, what do I have next? Oh, we're almost done. Okay. Here is one that Godzilla vs. King Kong. I don't think I've ever watched any of those movies, to be honest. Well, maybe when I was really little, I watched it, but I don't remember. I don't like monkeys. I have a fear of like monkeys and primates, so I try to avoid watching things that have like those creatures in them because they freak me the fuck out. Oh, no. I don't like them at all. Let me have some water before I continue. Does Bigfoot count? I mean, I would be pretty scared if I saw Bigfoot, to be honest with you. I would be pretty scared if I'm being real here. I would not I would not enjoy meeting Bigfoot, I don't think. But the next movie we have is a movie apparently, what the fuck? I'm looking at the reviews. Why is it only, what? Why does it have, okay. This was actually a really good movie. I don't know why the reviews on this Google reviews are so low, but this movie is called The Pope's Exorcist. It was recommended to me by someone, and I thought it was a very good movie. It's an exorcism movie, so I went into it kind of thinking like, okay, it's an exorcism, you're gonna have some kid who's gonna be like, oh, the devil sodomizes me, you know, and it's like, okay, do you have anything else unique or interesting to say? Right? Because my issue with like exorcism movies is that they're all kind of like the same, right? It's like, oh, it's a child and they're saying something weird because they're possessed. Oh, how spooky. And then there's the exorcist. He comes in and he's like, oh, the devil is too strong. No. And then somehow, through the power of God, it's very appropriate that I'm wearing my Pope hat right now. But this one, I should probably talk about the actual movie. So, Russell Crowe does a very good Italian accent. Yeah, the damage The Exorcist did to the supernatural genre is unimaginable. But I will say that this was a very refreshing exorcism movie because it was not so much about the exorcism as it was about like the characters themselves. Like the main character is this this priest who is he's literally the Pope's exorcist. He is like the chief of exorcism in all of like the Vatican or whatever. So he goes around and he does exorcisms, some of which are sanctioned, some of which are unsanctioned, and he gets in trouble for that. But basically what happens is that there's this family that, yeah, he's my chosen exorcist. He's my guy. Inigo Pano, welcome. And there's this American family that moves to Spain, and they inherit this castle, not a castle, sorry, a church, and they're trying to renovate it because the wife's husband died and it was the only thing that he left her because they're broke and they're gonna fix it up and sell it, so they're gonna like be living there, right? Although, I don't know, I feel like it would probably be easier to get a job than to renovate an old church in another country. But that's none of my business. That's not really my business. And as they're kind of like doing the renovation, they unleash an evil. better than The Nun 2. It was a lot better than The Nun. That's like a schlock movie. That's like a stupid, crappy schlock movie. I saw The Nun. I didn't see the sequel though. And the evil, of course, affects their son, who is mute, or at least has been mute for like the past, since his dad died, he's been mute. And so the boy starts talking and they're like, oh, he's talking again. Yay, he's fixed. And then, you know, he does the thing that like possessed children do, where they start saying like gross and disturbing things. And they're kind of like, uh-oh, I guess we should like get a priest or something. Well, actually, that wasn't their first thing. At first they thought it was some kind of like psychological thing. So, you know, they're getting him an MRI and shit. One thing that I like the way this movie did is that there's a very slow and gradual transformation of the son over the course of his possession. Like, it starts with him getting sicker and sicker, and then gradually his appearance becomes more twisted, more like inhuman. And it's not something that's so like, you know, immediate. It's something that builds very slowly, which I really like. The practical effects in this movie were absolutely fantastic. They were really, really good. The special effects were very good too, but it always like impresses me when a movie uses practical effects in a way that's, because it's like everyone does VFX now, and it's like, bring back the practical effects, bring back the buckets of blood, you know? But there's this one scene in the movie that really impressed me. It's this scene where, without spoiling it, one of the priests he's basically like on the ground, and there's this like person who's like crawling over him, and it's like a demon, right? So he puts his cross to like the demon's forehead to exorcise it, and it explodes in this like explosion of blood that just goes everywhere. And it was so like, I could tell that was like a real explosion, right? That was like practical. That was practical. I mean, there was some like, you know, special effects in there too, but the explosion itself I could tell was practical. And it was so like, it was so fantastic. It really, really impressed me with how they pulled it off. But does the crow get rustled? I mean, he does get a little bit rustled. His jimmies do get rustled quite a bit in this movie. The story itself more revolves around the priest and his assistant, and kind of like what they're, as like the course of them trying to find out what this demon is, who its name is, like how are they gonna get rid of it. And they find out that this church is built on this like Spanish Inquisition era like tomb of evil, basically. Like it's like some pretty nasty stuff went down there. So it got like, the site itself was like condemned by the Vatican or something, which is why the church was like shut down for so long, because it was like a black site, basically. The Vatican's black site is more or less what it was. Yeah, at least they showed actual lore, exactly. It was definitely a fun watch. I especially there's this one scene that's really funny. So they have to do confession before they do the exorcism, right? Because the demon will use your sins and it will taunt you with your sins. So you have the Pope's exorcist. He's talking to the other priest, and he's like, when was the last time you did confession? And he's like, oh, like 8 months ago. And Russell Crowe, he's like, 8 months? What? No, we don't have time for this. We don't have time for this. Just confess your sins right now. You are very sorry for all of your sins, right? Okay, Jesus forgives you. It's just like this super like, it's like, oh God, we don't have time for all this. You did your last confession 8 months ago. Okay, it's fine. I'm the priest. Jesus forgives you. You're good to go. That was funny. So it was interesting. I didn't know that priests could do confessions for each other, but I guess that makes sense. Like, yeah, exactly. Why can't normal priests do that? I mean, I've always felt this way, but in a way, like, confession is kind of like, it's like a spiritual therapy, I think. Like, it's almost like a therapy in a way. I thought that was like interesting. Let me have some water. But you know, it kind of goes back and forth between them. Like, yeah, it's like venting and repenting. Exactly. But it's one thing I liked about the movie is that they're like go between 3 languages. They're go between like Italian, Spanish, and English. With subtitles, of course. But it's interesting how it's like they're kind of like talking in Italian, and then they switch to Spanish, and then they switch to English. Which I suppose is something that like multilingual people do. Actually, yeah, that is what multilingual people do. I had there's a when I was in my school in Japan, there was like 2 people. One was Italian and one was Spanish, and they would often kind of like go back and forth between like Italian and Spanish. It was good Spanish, yeah. I was your contrition is to donate a $19 Fortnite card to the church. For the Pope's League of Gamers. The Pope's chosen gamer. That's me. I'm the Pope's chosen gamer. Oh man. Yeah, like they must have had a really good like accent trainer on here, because like they all sounded very like authentic, you know, in the way they were speaking. Very good accents. Yeah, I think you would like it, Dolly. I think you would like it as someone who's also like a polyglot. You might find it interesting. But there's this like, so Russell Crowe, the priest, he's in Italy, right? He's in the Vatican, and they show him like scooting around on his Vespa, and it's really cute because he's like a big guy, right? He's like a big burly guy, and he's just like riding around on this like cute little Vespa. And so they tell him like, okay, you have to go to Spain to deal with this possession. And he's like, okay. And then like they show him riding to the church on his little Vespa. And I'm like, did he drive from Italy, from the Vatican to the Spanish countryside on a fucking Vespa? Is that even possible? Like, is that something you can actually do? Because I don't know, because it's like, Vespas they're like city bikes. They're not, you can't really ride them around in the countryside. Those things, they need gas, you know? I mean, I'm assuming he had like a gas tank with him, but it was just like, damn dude, that's some dedication. You could have flown, but instead you drove your little Vespa through Italy, through France, just to get to Spain. I mean, I guess, right? I'm sure the Vatican would have paid for a plane ticket. But they end up uncovering this like ancient evil, and they go a lot into kind of like lore of the Crusades, lore of like the Catholic Church, which I thought was very cool and interesting, even though I'm sure like a lot of it was kind of like made up. But there's some really nice set pieces in this movie, really wonderful set pieces. Really wonderful effects. The Lord demands you go on the 72-hour road trip. Yeah, maybe the Lord told him like you can't take a plane. You have to take your Vespa there. You have to go there like this. Maybe that's what happened. Cause I mean, like, oh, hold on. Let me Google Maps this shit. Let's see. Actually, no. Vatican to Barcelona. Let's see if it'll give me a route. What? Oh, that's like a 14-hour road trip. That's like, okay. I mean, that's still a long road trip. Cause yeah, you go through Monaco, go through Montpellier. Okay. Let's try, because Barcelona is by the coast. Let's try Madrid. How was that, like 18-20 hours? That's like a 20-hour road trip by car. By bike, it's probably like it says like by cycling, it's like 3 days. So it probably took him like maybe like 2.5 days of like constant driving, right? It didn't. I don't remember where specifically in Spain it said it was, but that's not as bad as I thought it would be. It probably, because if you're taking the coastline, I'd show you my screen, but it basically goes from the Vatican all up the coast of Italy, through Monaco, through Montpellier, through Barcelona. Yeah, that would be a beautiful drive. That would be a beautiful drive, actually. That might actually be a really nice road trip to take. Because you're on, like, the coast. Oh, yeah. That would... Oh, through Marseille, too. That actually... No wonder he did a road trip. That's actually would be a lovely road trip to take if you just get to drive along the coast all day. That'd be nice. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I thought this movie was a horror, not a world trip one. We take a little trip. We do a little driving. That's actually not too bad. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't do it on a Vespa, but you know, because it's not like so remote that you can't get gas, I would assume. It's not like America where you go for like 100, 200 miles without like a gas station. Like it's fucking Europe. There's probably like a gas station every 20 kilometers. I don't know. Hold on. But this was a really nice movie. It was very refreshing, especially in the realm of exorcism movies, where everything is kind of like the same and schlocky. Oh, thank you for lurking, Crispy Pies. It was definitely like I said, it was refreshing. It was nice to see. I would highly recommend it. I think, did I watch it on Amazon or Netflix? Let me... Oh, it's on Netflix. Yes, it's on Netflix. Okay, otherwise you have to like buy it from like Amazon Prime or Apple TV. But this was a very good movie. I would highly recommend it. Really good effects, really nice. Definitely like a nice break from the usual schlocky, you know, horror movie crap. Highly recommended. And let's see, what else do we have today? Oh, we have one more movie today. One more movie to talk about. And it's the one I literally just saw like 2 hours ago. Oppie! Everyone's favorite physicist. Oppie Oppenheimer. I actually like in the movie how everyone calls him Oppie. Literally everyone's just like, oh, it's Oppie. Oppie's here. It's like, yeah, it's Oppie. Oppie Oppenheimer. But I finally saw Oppie. Finally. Me and my dad have been trying to get tickets for Oppie for like the past like month now. Because every time we try to get tickets, it is sold out. Just completely. Like none of the seats are there. But we were able to get into a theater that was like not really full. I talked about this at the beginning, but I'll talk about it again. So when we went to see the movie, it was supposed to start at a specific time, right? And we get there, and we're waiting, and the lights in the theater are still on, and like we're like waiting for the movie to start, right? Like 10-20 minutes go by and still nothing, and people are starting to get agitated. So, you know, eventually someone like goes and talks to like the management, and they're like, yeah, they're having a problem with the projector. So literally like half an hour went by before like the movie started. Thankfully, we didn't have to watch any previews, but we were just like sitting in this theater with the lights on for half an hour because they couldn't get the fucking like previews to work, which was like, you know, a blessing in disguise. I don't know if it was because like the previews were all digital. In this movie, we saw it in 70mm. We saw it, I wanted to see it in IMAX, but the Dungeon synth on blast. I wanted to see it in IMAX, but we weren't able to get a seat for the IMAX theater, so we just settled for 70mm. And this is probably like the first movie I've watched in a really long time that's actual film. Like that's not like a digital movie, right? So it was like, you know, you see like the flickering of the screen, the little like lines that appear from the film. It was all like very, it felt like kind of retro, right? Like it really lended itself to, you know, the fact that the movie takes place like 60, I don't know, fucking 70 years ago or whatever. It really fits. But it was indeed a Christopher Nolan movie. I will say that. Very bombastic, very loud sounds, very like, you know, scenes that are not necessarily based in reality. You know, a lot of kind of a few trippy scenes too. Very visually well produced. The plot was kind of like more or less what I expected. It was guys in a room talking. Based in reality. Yeah, this movie sounds based. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. Lot of guys in a room talking. I wish that I had done some research or some I had some background knowledge on Oppenheimer beforehand and his whole deal, because there's definitely things that they were talking about in the movie that I didn't know about, because this movie specifically is based on a book. I believe the book was called The American Prometheus or something, which I assume is basically recounting the life of Oppenheimer, which is exactly what this movie does. It actually starts, it's one of those movies where you have two things happening at the same time. You have the ending that is they show you the ending, well, not really the ending, but what happens, the results, the aftermath, before they show you how we got there. And it starts off where he's in kind of a trial, and he has to recount his life, basically how he got to this point. Hold on. So it starts off with a movie where he was studying in Cambridge, his kind of academic history. You know, he was never really a lab guy. He was more of a theoretical guy. People are tasty. Welcome. Yes, I finally saw Oppie. Did he say it's opping time before the big detonation? No, he did not. He did not say Oppenheimer style, unfortunately. I should watch that video again. That video was pretty funny. He did say the line. He did say the line twice. I am become death, destroyer of worlds. Or in my case, I am become Slappy, silliest of seas. My bomb killed millions? No. Oh. But it was interesting because a lot of people kind of had the idea. People who've never seen this movie have this idea that it glorifies Oppenheimer. People think that it celebrates him, but it really does not. It does not paint a picture of him as a particularly good person. He's actually kind of a shitty guy. At least in the movie, they make him seem that way. Because first of all, he's kind of a fuckboy. He cheated on his wife twice. And when he doesn't get his way, he kind of mopes around about it and makes a big deal. He's kind of a weird guy. He does not act in a way in which a normal person would act. There's lots of jokes in the movie about physicists and scientists just being weird people who are difficult to work with, which I'm assuming is true, right? Hold on. So it's DeviantArt average you. Yeah, an engineer, I suppose, yeah. So there's also kind of this one thing that I think a lot of people sort of think about, or at least they don't really realize or something, is did the people who make this movie not have any idea that what they were making was a bomb that was going to be used against millions? And from the story that they're telling, basically the bomb was originally supposed to be used against Germany, but they weren't able to develop it in time for that, because by that time oh god oh god, I'm sorry everyone. Oh, by the time they had plans, they were working on making the bomb, Germany had surrendered, and all that was left was Japan. So, oh, thank you for the head bat. So that's kind of like in the later stages, they were basically okay, well this bomb, we're gonna have to use it, you know, on Japan now, because it's too late. Germany surrendered, but Japan is still you know, they're still out there doing their thing, and Pearl Harbor happened. But in terms of the character of Oppenheimer, he was very aware about what they were trying to use his bomb for. And I think a lot of these scientists were. There was even like, they wanted to, he didn't, Oppenheimer didn't. There were some scientists that started a petition for them to not use the bomb on Japan, but they had to shut down the petition because it was a security risk. And, you know, at this time also, like it was, you know, World War II, and they were cracking down on communists or suspected communists. And Oppenheimer, he was very involved. He was actually teaching at Berkeley, and you know how Berkeley is. There was a large like communist presence at Berkeley, and he was never a communist. He was never like a card-carrying communist, right? But he was very much involved in like sort of that political like scene, right? Like he knew a lot of people that were, he was in contact with a lot of people that were, so it was something that he was sort of tangentially involved in. You know how Berkeley is. I think like I would assume that everyone knows how Berkeley is, but Berkeley, UC Cal Berkeley, very, very liberal college, based out of Berkeley. Shit goes down there. People protest there all the time. People, you know, fighting over free speech and all that crap. It's Berkeley, right? So, you know, it was during this time where he was like kind of trying to distance himself from that sort of background, because like, you know, he was working for the government, and when you work for the government, you're not supposed to be a communist, basically. So, you know, he really had to like prove to them that he was like no longer, you know, involved in this. But like a lot of the movie like was definitely him. He was very aware about how like the bomb was supposed to be used, and it wasn't that he was ignorant of it. It's more like he was trying not to think about it. Trying, like I think all the scientists were. Like when you work on something like that, you kind of just have to disconnect yourself from the reality of what it is you're doing. And I think that's something that probably a lot of people in, you know, science and technology have to do. Whether they should do it or not is a different story, but I think that is something that they kind of like do, whether on purpose or kind of without thinking about it, is kind of having to disconnect from reality, I guess. Like, you know, people, it's like making a weapon. It's like people who work at you know, what's that big weapons manufacturing company? It's like two names. Fuck, what is it called? God, what is it called? No. Which one? That's what I'm trying to figure out. The big US one. Lockheed Martin, yes. Like that's what I imagine like people who work at like Lockheed Martin have to like, yeah, Manco, exactly. Like you kind of just have to like disconnect yourself from the reality of like what you're doing like will inadvertently cause the deaths of people. Whether you should do that, like I said, that's a different story. But you know, I suppose even like General Electric is, I don't know the General, wait, does General, are you just making a joke, or is General oh boy, I mean, in a way, General Electric is kind of a terrorist organization. in a way, right? Oh boy. Excuse me. But it definitely did show that he felt, you know, guilt about doing that, right? Oh, they manufacture the wait, they really actually okay, wow, I guess they really are then. Oh boy. That I did not know. I thought they weren't involved in that, but what do I know? Clearly nothing, right? Cause this was like the Manhattan Project. It was interesting to see like how they kind of like went through it. Like they built up like a, you know, the Alamo lab, which I've never been to the, I've been to White Sands in New Mexico, which is near the lab where all this went down. It's pretty close, but also still far away, way out in the desert. Because apparently Oppenheimer and his brother, they had like a ranch way out in the New Mexico desert, which I didn't know. They didn't really strike me as the ranching type, but that's kind of how they picked out that location. They were, you know, very familiar with the desert, very familiar with that location, and that it was, you know, remote enough for them to be able to do some tests in there. I do remember the Alamo. Hold on. Beautiful, beautiful place. If you like the desert, very beautiful place. But they built up a whole town there, you know, and they basically moved their families there to kind of do all the theoretical and experimentation work. Oh, what? It's censored the word gringos. It's censored the word gringos. Is gringos a slur now? Oh my god. Oh boy. I just, it's fine. I don't give a fuck. But there was like, there's this scene where Oppie was talking to the president, who was then Eisenhower? Was it Eisenhower? I forget. But he's basically like, you know, he asked Oppie like, what are you gonna do with the you know, the Alamo lab once once you're done with the test? And he's like, oh, I'm gonna give it back to the Native Americans. And he just like stabs him with this like death glare, because it's like the president at the time, I forget who he was, but he was one of those guys who like fucking hated like Native Americans. He was one of those like super racist guys, right? And like he just like didn't speak to him. Truman, yeah, I think it was Truman. And so, you know, Oppenheimer, he basically like talks to the president. He's basically like, I feel like I have blood on my hands. And the president is like, you're a little bitch, get out of my office. I mean, he didn't say that, but he more or less insinuated it, right? Because like, you know, yeah, regular US president, exactly. So, actual quote, I mean, he basically said that. And so he, you know, he kind of lost what goodwill he had with the president. But Oppenheimer, after he was done with the project, he did spend the rest of his career kind of trying to enforce a nuclear regulatory committee to make sure that they, you know, maybe didn't like use like bombs as like he was kind of trying to slow down the US's like manufacturing of like bombs, right? And one thing that I thought was very interesting and also kind of scary is that early on in the movie, they're running calculations to see like how they're basically running calculations for the bomb, right? All theoretical stuff. And one of them like does a calculation, and his calculation basically says that like if this thing goes off, it could cause a chain reaction that would destroy the world. Like literally actually destroy the world. Because like what he had calculated is that the atoms, hold on. Sorry. The atoms would continuously like, have a reaction with the atmosphere, like the hydrogen or something. And that if it would be a potentially unstoppable reaction that would like eat up the entire atmosphere. The chain reaction is still happening. In a way, it kind of is, yeah. Which is like kind of scary. Like the fact that someone made a calculation that said like, if you do this, it might actually destroy like the entire world, literally destroy the world. And like, you know, Oppie was talking to one of the general, like calculate for lay bomb. the general of the project. And he's basically like, so there's like a small chance that this might destroy the world. And the general is like, well, how much of a chance? And he's like, it's not it's like almost zero, almost a 0% chance that this bomb can like destroy the actual like entire world. And he's just like, oh, okay. Like, thanks for telling me. Oh, hold on, I need some more water. Sir Oppie, les bomb not only kill les millions, could destroy les globe. Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was like a little scary that like people are like, I had never even thought that that was a possibility before, that you could actually potentially destroy like the entire like world with like one explosion. Like I always thought that they were exaggerating when they say like, oh, like, you know, a nuclear explosion could destroy the world. I always thought that was like an exaggeration. But clearly it's not an exaggeration. If that was like a possibility, that was like, they calculated, right? So that's like, sorry, I keep having to clear my throat and it's the most awful sound in the world. That was like a little scary, like, oh, like that could have happened. I wish I didn't know that, right? Like sometimes you hear something and you're like, damn, like that could have been like an actual like, you know, world cataclysmic event. Yeah, all JRPG villains just need is a nuclear bomb instead of 80 hours of video game. Oh my god. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like, was the movie boring? I would say I thought it was interesting. I thought it was paced very, very well for a 3-hour movie. I thought the pacing was... Oppie, the bomb would make many people sad, and I'm feeling kind of weird, champ, about it. This may not be poggers. I would say it can be boring. It's not a movie for everyone. Like, most of the movie is guys talking in a room. It's guys talking in a room, talking about things that you don't really understand, unless you're like a physicist, right? I mean, I didn't like think it was like unboring. Like, it wasn't so boring that I felt like I needed to get my phone out or I needed to leave. I think that there were parts of it that were boring and parts of it that were interesting. And excuse me. In terms of like, I was really worried about like, because, you know, I had heard like the sex scene was like kind of graphic, but it really wasn't. It really was not like that graphic at all. Like there were several. Well, technically there were 2. And then there was one scene of them just kind of like sitting around naked. So that was like, it was just some boobies, right? I thought we were gonna get see Cillian Murphy's dingle dongle, but we didn't, thank God. 1 to 10, 1 being mid and 5 being busted and 10 being bombastic. I would give it like, I would say like a 7.5. I would say a 7.5. It is a Christopher Nolan movie, and he is a very competent director. He knows what he's doing. You know, he knows what he's doing, right? And I feel like this movie was a good, like, you know, definitely like a good example of, I would say, like, his works. Because hold on. What other movies? Have I seen any other Christopher Nolan movies? Oh, Interstellar. Yeah, he did Interstellar. That was one I remember seeing. So if you like his movies, if you like the way he directs, you might like this one. Have I watched? Yes, the Batman movies. Those ones I did watch as well. The Dark Knight with the Society guy. the Society. When he said we live in a society, I remember that. That was pretty iconic. Because he did Man of Steel. That one I didn't see. Batman, I saw the Batman ones. Yeah, I would say like, it's if you don't like movies with a lot of dialogue, you probably won't like this movie because it is almost entirely dialogue. It is almost entirely people talking. I would say, like, what makes this movie interesting is, like, not only the visuals, but just, like, the way that they're acting. Like, they're, like, let's be real here. They're talking about something that's pretty fucking boring, which is, like, the logistics of making a nuclear bomb. At least to me, I think that's kind of boring. But, you know, the way they talk about it, the way they, you know, set up the scenes, the way they dress the sets, the way that they, you know, the whole thing is put together makes it very interesting to watch. Because there's always, like, something that you can kind of, like, there are scenes that kind of, like, take you out of it. Scenes that kind of take place in, you know, his head, like, his mind palace, his thoughts. Like, in the explosion, there is, well, there's several explosions. The big one being the test explosion at the Alamo. And I thought that was really, really well done. I'll tell you guys how they did it, because I was, like, expecting like the loudest sound ever when that bomb went off, and the way they did it is it goes off and it is completely silent. Like, it is so quiet, and you see the flames rising. You see, like, you know, the fires and the, you know, the clouds rolling, and it's, like, completely silent. And that was such really an effective choice, because I am just sitting there and I am just like, the breath is taken out of me, because I am just, like, so pressed for, like, yeah, like the THX sound. Like, I'm just, like, waiting for the loudest sound ever. But you know what's funny is that the explosion is not even the loudest sound in the movie. There's like a few scenes in the movie that have, like, an even louder sound, but I'm just, like, sitting there and I'm just like, oh god, this is gonna be the loudest sound ever, isn't it? But it wasn't. It was pretty loud, don't get me wrong. Nolan movies are pretty loud in general, but I forgot how nice it is to see a theater in the movie where all the sound is balanced and you can actually hear things without subtitles. That was nice. Like, the fact that I could look at the screen and I could understand what they're saying without needing subtitles. That was, like, the first time in a long time I've watched a movie without subtitles, you know? So that was refreshing. That was refreshing. Fart reverb. I'm sure someone is going to edit it, like, when the Blu-ray comes out or whatever, to just, like, have, like, the explosion and just, like, a fart reverb, probably. That's gonna be a thing that happens. Oh, excuse me. Oh, a vine boom. Yeah, that would be a good one too. A big old vine boom. I can imagine that. Yeah. But yeah, the picture, like, it painted of Oppie is that he was not a particularly good person. Like, he was smart, but he was kind of shitty. Like, they're basically, like, at the end of the movie, they're kind of, like, having a trial for him, because, like, they don't want to, well, this one guy does not want to renew his security clearance because, like, he has a grudge against Oppie, and he's trying to, like, oust him from his position at, like, the nuclear energy commission or whatever, a nuclear whatever, I don't even remember anymore. And so it's kind of like a trial where they cross-examine Oppie. They kind of poke at all the things he said, all the things he did, like, kind of, like, saying, like, did this happen? How did this happen? Did you do this? And they kind of mix that in with, like, flashbacks. I mean, the whole movie is kind of a flashback, but there is a large portion of the movie that is in black and white, actually, which I thought was a very, very nice touch. Especially, you know, for a movie that's supposed to take place. It was like, like, it was interesting because the part that takes place, like, the most recent, like, the ending was in black and white, whereas the beginning is in color, which is interesting because normally if something is in black and white, you have the flashbacks that are in black and white, and the regular part of the movie is in color. But it wasn't like a super, like, it wasn't like half of the movie was in black and white. It was like a decent sized portion, and it was done very well too. It was definitely done very well, because you know when you film something in black and white, it's not like filming something in color. You actually have to pay a lot more attention to things like light and shadow, how they, you know, reflect on things, how they sort of how it's gonna look in the end. I don't know if they filmed it with a black and white camera or just with black and white film. Probably just with the film. Hold on. But it looked very good. It looked very good. It was very well balanced, and just like the fact that it was a movie that was filmed in, like, I think it was filmed in 70mm too. So it was definitely, it had that kind of like old sort of feel to it, like it was like a classical feel, because you don't really see too, like, every movie nowadays is digital. All the theaters are like digital projections. So for like them to like actually see, like, you know, like I said, seeing a movie in all its like crispy, crunchy glory is really a nice nice thing to see. But like the whole, oh god, like half of the movie. So there was this like post I saw like before, like it was like a while ago, where it was like comparing, it was like Barbenheimer, right? And it was a picture of Barbie and a picture of Cillian Murphy. It was on Twitter, and the caption was like, I just know that they'd have the most comical lesbian relationship. And I was like, the person who like who saw that like picture must have thought that Cillian Murphy was a lesbian. And I have not been able to stop like thinking about that, because it was just so fucking funny to me, because he kind of has like an androgynous look about it, but just like half the movie I just like could not like stop seeing him as like an incredibly like cunty and well-dressed lesbian. like you know, just like a really like that like classical look. It's like it's a good look, right? It's a good look, but I just like could not unsee that through like the duration of the movie. There's this one scene at the end where they kind of have to age everyone, like that takes place more like later, much later than the actual movie takes place. So they have a lot of people like a lot of the characters that you see with like old, I don't know if they did it digitally, they probably did it practically with like old age makeup, and it looked pretty good. It was pretty good looking for like what it was. Oh, let's see. But yeah, that's really all I have to say on Oppie. It was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the theatrical experience of it all. Oh, the Einstein scenes were great. I like the Einstein scenes. The guy who played Einstein, I forget his name, but he did a wonderful job. There's a lot of accents in this movie too. I should mention that. A lot of like German accents. As well as like a few other accents as well they were actually, I'm pretty good with accents. I know not everyone is. But lot of accents in this movie. Pretty good accents too, I think. Yeah. Oh, I need to clear my... Oh god. Sorry. Oh, I keep getting so embarrassed because like I tap to mute my mic, except sometimes I don't, and then like I see the light that's still going on when I'm like making the noise. But yeah, because the US took a lot of German scientists. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's pretty much all that I've watched like the past couple months. I mean, there are like a few movies that I don't really want to talk about because they weren't very good, but I gotta go, so I gotta start wrapping it up here. Let me bring this. After the movie, did you get the Wappenheimer? I did not get the Wappenheimer. I just had I just had some popcorn. I didn't even finish the popcorn. I had like half of it. And then I was just like, oh, you know what? I'm too full. I can't do this, right? I was too full. No Wappenheimer for me. Although I haven't had a Whopper in quite some time. I'm due for a Whopper, I think. Alrighty. Yeah, with that, it was like a regular popcorn too. I mean, I had my dad with me and I offered him some popcorn, but he didn't eat any. It was just me and my Diet Coke. Alrighty. I think I'm going to turn off the BGM, and I'm going to switch over to the ending screen here. There we go. So this is my schedule for next week. We got quite a few things going on here. I found this cute little indie game called Seal World, and it is a game about seals, of which I am. So I will be playing that Thursday. Team Fortress 2, I will do Team Fortress 2 this week. I will do Team Fortress 2 this week. I wasn't feeling too good this Friday, but hopefully next week I will feel much better. Armored Core. I think, you know what I'm gonna do? I think I'm gonna play a little bit of Armored Core off stream. And just kind of like do that. Just because like I feel like it's gonna be a long game, right? So I feel like I should probably try to get as much done as I can, because I feel like the hype for Armored Core is kind of starting to die down. Oh god, my voice is leaving me. And then Sunday is Power Wash Sim, which I don't even know. Maybe I'll be done with the game before then. We'll see, we'll see. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all had a good time. And before I go, I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're from. And hopefully, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!